Welcome back to another evening in the Stormcave, where stories live and breathe and family memories centered and focused around those stories are cherished. I'm your host, Grant Walker, and I'm here with my co-host, Jenelle Schmidt. Janelle, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing good. So today we are going to talk about something that's really a passion of mine, which is illustrated books. I would say illustrated children's books, but I think it goes beyond that. I would say it's illustrated books that you can enjoy with your children. And there's obviously again a range. There's books that you read with your kids when they're very little. And obviously, you start with I think I don't know if this is the case where you live, Janelle, but here every single child that goes home when they're born in the state of Washington gets the book Goodnight Moon from the hospital. So that's the first book that they get to read. And I actually like that book. But these, I think the books that I've selected, I'm not sure about you, Janelle, but the books that I've selected to talk about today are more stories that I enjoy as an adult and that my kids also enjoy.
Yeah, I picked kind of a little bit of a variety because I think there are books that are fun to read when your kids are different ages. And so there's some books that are just fun to read no matter what. Even Goodnight Moon is one of those. We actually have a copy of that book called Goodnight Lab.
Oh,
And it's like somebody like going around and saying goodnight to all of these like super fancy scientific equipment things with like the actual
oh,
names. So it's like goodnight spectrometer, right?
like a
It's kind of
science
fun.
lab.
Yeah, it's cool. So anyway,
Right on.
but yeah, I had a hard time picking because I was like, oh, what level? So I'm just kind of going with kind of what I figured you would be going with is kind of those like gorgeous illustrations and the story that's not just words like the cow goes moo or the dog goes bark or whatever you think a dog says. But yeah.
Yeah, and as we dive into it, we'll obviously talk about it with each story, but it is interesting to me every Christmas one of the gifts that I try to give each of my kids. It's not always the one that they're most excited about, but it's the one I'm most excited about. And I hope that they cherish them more as time goes on. But I always try to buy each of them a specific illustrated book. And it becomes harder and harder each year to find something. I remember this past Christmas I was excited because I got to go to Barnes and Noble. And so I went to the back to look at all of their illustrated books, looked through hundreds of them, and either couldn't find anything that looked interesting to me or it was books that we already had. And I was actually surprised that a number of books that I think are the most fantastic weren't a part of their collection. So when I'm looking for an illustrated book, it's kind of twofold. The illustrations are obviously super important and I want them to be fantastic, but also I'm looking for a good story. And when I say a good story, all of the elements, the same things that we talked about in the movies we were watching last week or that we were sharing about last week. That's what I'm looking for in any story. So uh, again, with these, as you're reading, as you're listening in, we hope that maybe you haven't read some of these books because it would be awesome to be able to add them to your collection. And you're in for a treat if you haven't. But also, again, in the comments, if you have illustrated books that you love that you think, oh, maybe we haven't read, or even if you think we have read them, we would love to get those suggestions in the comments because, like I said, I am always looking for illustrated books to read with my kids. Each night we read and are reading through novels. Right now we're reading through the Harry Potter series, so that's kind of a longer time commitment. But there's times where it's like, you know what, let's break it up with just a short story that we can read from start to finish in an evening. So always looking for that. And if you guys have suggestions or comments or favorites, please drop them in the comments because we are always looking for the next great story that we can share as a family.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because I did that same thing for quite a few Christmases where I was getting the kids a picture book and picking something out specifically for each of them. But now that my youngest is 7 and they're all reading like chapter books, we've kind of switched to at Christmas we have adopted the Icelandic Jálabakaflad tradition where we
What did you call
actually
me?
it's Jálabakaflad. It
Ah,
means the Jolly Book Flood, and it's an Icelandic tradition where on Christmas Eve everybody gets a book, and then you spend all day Christmas Eve just resting and relaxing and eating chocolate and reading your new book. And I love the idea of this. It's such a cozy, wintry, beautiful idea. It never really works out that way because we have like other things that happen on Christmas Eve. My husband he helps out with sound, and so he always ends up doing the sound at the Christmas Eve services, and so he has to be at church at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So the day gets shortened, but we do like on Christmas Eve morning we get up, and the only things that are under the tree are these books, and they're wrapped, and everybody gets to open them, and it's been fun seeing how it's changed, as the kids get older, that now they're not getting these picture books anymore. Now it's like we got Great in the like an old school set of Snoopy and Charlie Brown comics, and he loves them, and it's so fun. And Brant will get like, a lot of times the kids are reading series, so it's like the next book in the series that they're currently reading, and I'm trying to like time things so they haven't already gotten them from the library. And so that it's like, hey, you can sit down and actually read this. But anyway, it's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny you say that because Wyatt, my oldest son, was really into Calvin and Hobbes, still loves Calvin and Hobbes, but had kind of read, we got him the entire collection. And so he has read through the entire collection a number of times. And just recently, he discovered Snoopy. And when he comes home from the library, he'll always have a stack of every Snoopy book that the library had. And I always ask him, you don't think he could have left some for the other kids? But no, he cannot. So he is really big into Snoopy right now as well, which
Yeah,
is awesome. Which is awesome.
I love that, and I love that something that old has been so timeless. Like I thought maybe, I wasn't sure how the boys would like it, but they love Snoopy and Charlie Brown, and they also love Foxtrot. So comics are fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's dive in. Jenna, I'm going to have
Yeah.
you go first. So go ahead and introduce the first book that you want to talk about. Again, we are talking about illustrated books that we enjoy reading together as a family.
Yeah. So the first one that I picked is a little bit for a younger audience. It's a little bit shorter. Do you want me to hold it up?
Yeah, hold it up.
Okay, cool.
Maybe I can
So
find a picture. I said when we were talking with Derek about world building a few episodes ago,
yeah.
I said, we're going to throw up the maps of the worlds that you have created, Derek. And then I never did. And so everyone's just left wondering, did he actually create anything at all? But maybe I could find pictures of the book covers and we can throw those up as well. But yeah, hold the book up. Let's see it.
Okay. So it's The
I haven't seen
Gremlin
this
in
one.
My Couch.
Right on.
And
I'm not aware of this one at all.
this is an indie book.
Ooh.
Actually, a former student of mine wrote. She's now like massively popular over on TikTok and Instagram and stuff. She also writes fantasy series. But she has, I think, two little boys. Her name is Erin Winters. So it's The Gremlin in My Couch by Erin Winters. And it's just got the cutest little illustrations. So it's all these cute little illustrations, and she wrote it for her kids. And it's this, I think it's a game that they actually play in their family, where it's like she's like, there's this gremlin in my couch and he might eat me. And right. And then at the end, it's just a little boy, right? It's not actually a gremlin, and it's not like a creepy monster, but it's really cute. The illustrations are adorable. Is illustrated by Katine Butcher. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Katune Boucher. Anyway, Erin Winters, The Gremlin in My Couch. And it's one of those, like, it rhymes, and so it's kind of fun to read. It rolls off the tongue. It's very short. It's very sweet. So if you're looking for something for maybe a younger audience, and something that isn't going to keep your children up past bedtime for 30 minutes or more, this is a great one.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to have to check that out. The Gremlin in the Closet.
The Gremlin in My Couch. The Gremlin in My Couch.
The Gremlin in My Couch. Could be gremlins everywhere.
Yeah.
In my
The
house,
Gremlin in My Couch by Erin Winters.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to have to check that one out because I was not aware of that one.
Yeah.
But I do think, especially Wyatt and Luca, my two boys, I think they would love that. They would love that. They're all about gremlins and gremlinness. That's awesome. The first book that I am going to talk about is one I think that we both know. This is one that we grew up with, getting at the library. It's I would say a lesser known illustrated book. It's hard to find. We found it, probably a few years ago. We went to this library it was a bookstore. It was a bookstore in Portland, Oregon. And if any of you are listening in and have been to the bookstore in Portland, Oregon, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But this was the biggest bookstore I've ever been in. It felt like it was 3 or 4 stories. It's probably just 2 stories, but it was just massive. Had literally I started going through. I found the book Hurricane. I don't know if you remember that book growing up, where the tree falls in the yard and they turn it into a fort and a pirate ship and all those things, which was, we loved that, because whenever a tree fell in our yard, it was always like, oh, don't cut it up and take it away, leave it there for as long as possible, in fact, leave it there forever. And so I found that there. I just started going through books trying to remember titles, and they had all of them. And what's cool is they had all the books that I could think of, but it also had like every edition that you could think of. And so found this book there, and it had been years since I had read it, and was just taken right back to why I loved it so much growing up, and probably love it even more as an adult. And the book is William and Grandpa. I don't know if you can see that. William and Grandpa. It is written by Alice Schertle with illustrations by Lydia Dabkovich. And a simple story, but just a beautiful story. And we were talking about this a little bit last week. One of the things that I love in a children's book is the same that I love in a movie or any story that I might read or watch, and that's subtlety. And this book is full of beauty and truth and goodness and wonderful. Just, it says in the opening that it's for all grandpas, and it is. It's just a perfect depiction. But what I love is it's specific. It's William and Grandpa. It tells a very specific story with all of these little details thrown in to just drop you into a real story with real characters. That's not vague. It's not generic. It's very specific, and it doesn't talk about any of the things, like any of these lessons that you're getting overtly. You're just getting them as they kind of seep through the text into your soul, and I love that. Do you remember this book at all, Janelle?
Oh yeah, we own that one. I love that book.
Ah, right on,
It's
right on.
gorgeous.
Yeah, and I just, because I think this book is a little lesser well known, I just want to read a brief excerpt from this book, just a couple pages, just to give you a feel for what I love about it. And I'm not going to share what I think is being told here, because again, that kind of ruins the subtlety of it. But when I just see, the way William is interacting, William is kind of like Bluey. It was the 80s. So he shows up. William looks like he's about 5 years old, and he shows up on a bus that he's ridden by himself to go meet his grandpa. But it was a different time, and that was probably normal. So he's obviously spending, a week or a period of time with his grandfather. And so his grandfather picks him up at the bus stop and takes him home and tells him, go put your stuff in your room, your duffel bag, and then we're going to get ready for dinner. And so in the middle of the story, William goes into the bathroom to kind of get cleaned up and get ready. And it says, in the bathroom, Grandpa's shaving mug smelled sweet and spicy. William held the shaving brush under the faucet, stirred up a lather in the mug, and painted a foamy white mustache under his nose. He peered into the mirror on the medicine cabinet and pulled at his eyebrows, trying to make them curl up over his forehead the way Grandpa's did. Then he rinsed his face and went into the kitchen. William peeled the papery skins off a pair of onions. Grandpa chopped them and added them to the pot of chili bubbling away on the stove. Onions make everything taste better, Grandpa said. Except ice cream, said William, and Grandpa laughed. After dinner, William and Grandpa went outside and stood beneath the big jacaranda. Tell me about Grandma's tree, said William, just as he did every summer. Well, sir, said Grandpa, when your grandma and I first came to live in this house, that was a little tiny tree no taller than your shoulder. It was in our neighbor's yard, and he was going to cut it down because it was such a puny thing and never seemed to grow. Grandma talked him into letting us dig it up, and we planted it here by the back door. Grandma watered that tree and trimmed it and turned the earth beneath it. She took such good care of it that it began to grow. By the time our little boy was as big as you are, the tree was big enough for him to climb. That little boy was my daddy, said William. Yes, said Grandpa. He sat down in the yard, swaying, turning a seed pod over in his hand. Grandma used to say these looked like turtles. She did, said William. That's what I always think, too. Grandpa's face wrinkled into a smile. There's a lot of your grandma in you, he said. And some of you, too? Asked William. Grandpa chuckled. Yes, sir, some of me, too. Anyways, that's just a small excerpt from that book, and I love that. I feel like there's so much that is being conveyed there between a young boy and his his grandpa that I love. And there's a number of parts. I mean, it was funny. The kids came home the other day and they said, "Dad, you wouldn't believe what song we sang at school today." And they started singing, "We went to the animal fair, the birds and the beast were there, and the big baboon by the light of the moon was combing his auburn hair." And so apparently that was a real song. But I just love this story. The pictures just go great with it. It's off the beaten path. You'll probably have to dig around and search a little bit to try to find it. But that is the wonderful thing about Amazon, as I'm sure it is out there to be found.
Yes.
All right. Well, what's next on your list?
Cool. Well, in kind of the same vein, this is an older one. I'm sure that you've heard of it because we grew up with it. It is Arabella.
Oh, yes. That is a hard one to find.
Arabella. It is so hard to find, and it's written by Wendy Orr and illustrated by Kim Gamble. And it's again, it's about a little boy and his grandpa. And so very similar, in kind of the tone. And talk about subtlety. This is a story that is just so pretty, and it's this little boy. He's again, it's kind of a similar type of story. He's gone to visit his grandpa, possibly for the summer, and there's this ship called the Arabella, and that's what's on the cover. And there's this little boat that grandpa has, and that's the Arabella. And so there's all these different pictures of them going on these adventures and sailing in Arabella, the ship. And it's just a little tiny sailboat, right? It's not, anything huge. And what I love about this book, and I'm going to go ahead and give away the ending because it is worth it to know that it's coming. In every picture, the grandpa, who is very elderly, and the young boy are doing different things together. And in every picture, there's a wheelchair. Right. And I really remember the first time I read this book, and we get to the end and the little boy is sitting in the wheelchair, and you realize it was his wheelchair the whole time. It wasn't the grandpa, and you kind of get a hint of it on the cover because the grandpa is like in the background and he's sort of standing, and the boy is lower than him, and you can just see the handle of the wheelchair handle in the picture. But if you don't know to look for it, you would never notice it. And I just think it's so beautiful, the way that they kind of turn that. And clearly it was meant to be a surprise at the end, but it's just such a sweet story. And then there's a storm that happens, and Arabella starts to like float away, and so the boy goes down to the dock by himself, and he's trying to save the ship. And then the grandpa comes running out, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, I thought I lost you." And the boy's like, "But Arabella's your treasure." And he's like, "No, you're my treasure." Like,
Yeah.
let's just get this straight, that you're the thing that's important to me. And it's just such a beautiful story and beautifully illustrated. And anyway, it's it has a note to our other brother in it. So clearly this was his at one point, but I'm keeping it.
That's right.
Evan, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I stole your book.
That's right. They're trying to take you rightfully stole it from him. Well, what's funny is you had talked about this book, and I do remember it, but it was one that I'd kind of forgotten about. And I had probably the last two Christmases had started looking for it and couldn't find it anywhere. And just this Christmas was able to find it for my kids. And I think it doesn't spoil anything to know the story. I would love it. Could you read? I think it's the last page where it talks about that. So the young boy has gone out trying to rescue this ship for his grandfather because he just knows how much it means to him.
Yeah. Oh, he actually gets into the boat. That's right. The boat is sailing away and he gets into the boat. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where it is. I couldn't remember. I should have probably read these before, we had our podcast here. But okay. So he's in the boat, and the storm is kind of ending. Matthew's arms were so tired they wanted to sleep. His eyes were so sad they wanted to cry. Grandpa would never be happy without his Arabella. He steered in with the tide as the wind died away, driftwood from the storm bobbing all around him. Something nudged against the side of his boat. Matthew slid along the deck on his belly. He could just reach the water. He could just reach a slim carved mast, and he pulled the Arabella up out of the sea. Oh, Arabella is sorry. There's two ships. I should have probably explained that. There's the boat that they sail around in, and then there's the Arabella, which is this model ship in the picture.
What is occurring in this story?
I don't know.
You're gonna have to just go out and get it.
You're gonna have to go get the book. Anyway, he drifted into the wharf where Grandpa was waiting. He saw Grandpa's worried face, and then Grandpa's arms were tight around him, lifting him out of the boat and hugging him. I thought I'd lost what I loved best in all the world, Grandpa said. The Arabella? Matthew asked. You, said Grandpa. And that's when you see this last picture. And it's just.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The illustrations in that whole story are gorgeous. Who's the illustrator of that book?
Kim Gamble.
Kim Gamble. One of the things that I have done is whenever I find a book that I love the illustrations, we've done this a number of times. Probably the last book that I'm going to talk about is this way, but we start and I'll just go look for every book written by that author or every book illustrated by whoever it is that did the illustrations, and have found a number of beautiful books in that way. Yeah, so I would go and see what other books Kim Gamble has done illustrations for, because they are as beautiful as the story that's being told on the page.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely probably up there in my all-time favorite picture books.
Yeah, absolutely. The next book I'm going to talk about, we're going to introduce in a little bit of a different way. This is a book that, Jenelle, you and I both grew up with. It's a beautiful story, beautifully illustrated, but it has even a little bit more meaning for us, because the adventure that the characters in this story go on, we as a family weren't content to let them go on these adventures alone. In fact, we had to venture out a number of times to try to discover what it was they were looking for. And so before I introduce the book, I'm just going to play this clip, because now that I've got kids of my own, we have kind of continued that tradition. And when they were old enough, started reading this story with them, and they got really excited about, man, we have to go out also and look for the thing that it is they're looking for in this story. So here's just a quick video of us going on one of these adventures.
Oh, sure. My finger is stuck in here.
What's wrong with it?
My finger is stuck in here.
Do you see those tall trees over there?
Yeah.
That's probably where we're gonna see or hear now. Okay? Let's see who can walk quietly. Good job, White Birdie. Good job.
I just saw a giant bird flying in the sky, and I don't think it's any bird. I heard the sound coming from up there.
Where?
Up in the sky.
What is it?
I think it's an owl.
Do you think so? but it wasn't an owl. In fact, growing up, we went owling a number of times, and I have gone owling with my kids a number of times, and never once, I don't know, Jenelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but never once have we seen an owl. In fact, we've heard them. We've heard them in the trees. We've called for the owls just like they do in this story that I'm going to share with you guys. But you know what? It's a little bit like ROUSs. I'm starting to think that maybe they don't really exist.
I don't remember even hearing them when we went out as kids.
Maybe it was in my mind.
I have heard them in our neighborhood now as an adult, and I have gone out by myself in the middle of the night and called for them, and actually had a nice conversation with one time, and even got it on video. It's very dark. There's nothing in the video. It's just the sound. But so I'm convinced they exist, but no, I have never seen one in the wild.
Yeah, I'm not so convinced. It's funny because actually this morning at like 3:30 in the morning, there was an owl. Do owls hoot? Is it Brian Regan who owls don't say hoot?
Never in the history of owling has an owl ever enunciated like that.
Right. But I heard one and it sounded like it was literally right outside my window. And my first thought was get up, wake up the kids, and go out and find this owl. But then I rolled back over and said, you're not going to fool me, you fake animal. So the story is Owl Moon by Jane Yolen, illustrated by John. Man, what is it with illustrators and names that you can't pronounce? John Schoner. He's probably from Iceland, but Jane Yolen and John Schoner. And it is one of probably our favorite books. Just a beautiful story. A young boy who finally, after waiting and seeing his brothers have had the opportunity to go with dad, he gets to go owling with his dad. And it just goes through this beautiful story as he's kind of reciting all the rules of owling. When you go owling, you have to be brave. When you go owling, you have to be quiet. And at the end, and this is where I think it kind of dives into fantasy a little bit, because they see an owl and have a moment with this majestic beast. Pure fantasy. But it ends with he realizes now we can talk, now we can laugh, but he doesn't, because when you go owling, sometimes you don't need words. And again, there's some beautiful subtlety in this story, just the relationship between a boy and his dad, the idea of seeking for things that are elusive, that really call to you. And it's what drew us out. We used to go out. There was woods just northeast of our home. I have no idea if that was the direction they were. So directionally challenged, but we're going to say they were northeast across a pond. And we would hike out, especially in the wintertime, and hike through these woods. We would bring a Primus stove and we would stop in the middle of the woods with the moon reflecting the snow to make it almost light outside. And we would fire up this Primus stove, which we got a Primus stove for our dad because he was so into Arctic exploration. And so we never went exploring in the Arctic, but it felt like we were in these snowy woods, firing up this Primus stove to make hot chocolate and drink hot chocolate. And though we never saw an owl, the memories, core memories of getting to go on this adventure of seeking for something that was elusive. And so this book, as beautiful as it is, it almost means even more to me just because of the adventures it sent us on. And I'm just it's so fun that our kids have been able to enjoy that. And Jenelle, have you gone owling with your kids? You probably could, you live in the Midwest. That's like owl central, isn't it?
Well, like I said, I think there are owls in our neighborhood, but I have not seen one. I don't think I've taken the kids out owling, actually. I think, yeah, we haven't done that. We've done a lot of other, like, we like to go for hikes and stuff, but
for sure.
haven't gone out in the middle of the night when it's dark in the snow. But we should definitely do that now that I wouldn't have to carry any of them.
Yeah, well, yeah, it certainly makes it more enjoyable for you when you can get to the phase where they all want to hike. And in that video that we played, it was a very short hike. Believe me. Maybe
is about as long as the video.
Yeah. I think we spent as much time outside as that video is long, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I've gotten to the point where all of my kids can get all of their snow gear on by themselves.
Oh,
I feel like I have arrived, at like the next level of parent. I feel like, there are things that just make you feel like you've leveled up as your parent character.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many things. Parenting is all about ROI, return on investment. When they're little, by the time you get them all dressed and out the door into the snow, the first one has come back already and is done being in the snow. And just recently, it took the kids skiing, and I love skiing. I know, Janelle, you love skiing, but skiing is the most fun. But skiing with little kids on the rope tow is the least fun and the most exhausting. And it was just this last time, for the first time, my three oldest, I still have my 1-year-old who will have to go through the whole process, but I had all three of my older kids were finally off the rope tow. Reese has been off for a number of years and can pretty much get down anything. And Wyatt had moved on to the little Palma lift, but just 2 weeks ago, finally got Luca off of the rope tow. And it was just like, oh, yes, all of those years of holding those kids and breaking my back might finally pay off in a couple of ski buddies.
I took my kids all skiing last year for the first time. The girls had gone skiing with me one time when we went out to your house.
That's right.
And I discovered that I can't ski in the actual mountains because the view will literally kill me, because I kept getting distracted by how gorgeous everything was and then falling down the mountain and through orange fences. And our sister Brittany was like, "How did you get over there?" I don't know. I closed my eyes, but we had a homeschool ski day here last year.
I'm picturing Hot Rod when he's falling down the mountain.
I think that's what happened.
That's what skiing with Janelle is like that day. Now, you are actually a very good skier, and we did a lot of skiing in the Midwest, where in the mountains of Illinois. Yes. Which probably explains a lot. But yes, I do understand that the view can sometimes be distracting. You're looking out and not noticing.
Yeah, I was so used to looking out and just seeing flat. And so when I was skiing out in the Cascade Mountains, it was like I was looking out and seeing this brand new, beautiful scenery every time. But no, I took them. So we live in Wisconsin. So, the mountains of Wisconsin aren't real tall. But we went to this ski place, and they're 6 through 15, right? Ooh, and the girls had gone once, and neither one of them was very good at it. They were, they were 7 and 3 at the time. So, that was painful. But so I was thinking, okay, and my whole goal in life was to just have the best attitude all day, because I wanted this to be a core, beautiful memory that would potentially result in me having ski buddies. Right. Yeah. So I'm, trying to get 4 kids who've never stood on their own on skis. And it was a lovely day. And one of the things that I love about the place where we go is it has what's called a magic carpet.
Oh, those are the best.
So instead of a rope tow, it's a conveyor belt, and you step on it, and it's amazing. And so even though I was stuck skiing with my 6-year-old the whole day because he could not get down the hill on his own to save his life, it was so much better than having to go up a rope tow 47,000 times. So
yes. Oh,
highly recommend.
I've Luca, probably the similar age to your youngest boy.
Yep.
So him and Graydon would get along great. They do get along great. I'm talking like they've never met.
Right. They have very but you weren't there. You weren't there last summer when we hung out with your family.
No, I wasn't.
It was sad. Graydon and Luca are they are trouble. They have very similar personalities. They get along very well. Okay, little side note. We took all of the kids to this petting zoo in Door County, which was very fun. They've got the tiniest little baby goats, and they're adorable. Neither Luca nor Graydon had any interest in being there at all. Graydon's a little scared of all animals, except elephants. And we walk in, and Luca's just like, I can tell, child does not want to be here. Graydon just immediately hides behind me. Okay, he's 7 at this point. He hides behind me, and he just goes, "Why do we have to be here? I don't like any animals except elephants."
And there's probably not a lot of elephants at the petting zoo.
Not a lot of elephants at the petting zoo in Wisconsin. No,
that's unfortunate.
So He and Luca ended up sitting on a bench for a while. I got some really great pictures of them scowling at the world at large.
Such a hard life we make our children leave, taking them to petting zoos.
I know.
Oh man.
Evil parents.
Yes. Yeah.
Worst mother ever right here.
How could you? They will probably make a movie with an evil stepmother someday where she takes the princess,
forces her child to pet a kitten.
To pet a kitten. Yeah, that's rough. That's rough. Right on. Well, what's your you are up, I believe. What's your
Speaking of
book?
elephants, this is a newer book for me.
Speaking of elephants.
Speaking of elephants.
Segue.
Yes, it works out well. So my youngest child, Graydon, his favorite thing in the world is elephants. He loves elephants. Everybody who knows him knows that he loves elephants. And he has made a place for elephants in my world that maybe wouldn't have existed otherwise. And so I spent a good amount of time, especially back when I was getting everybody picture books, trying to find all the wonderful picture books that feature elephants for him. And I happened upon this gem. It is called Strictly No Elephants. And it is written by Lisa Mantchev and illustrated by Taiyun Yu.
You've got to be kidding me.
I'm not kidding. You got to look at that.
Oh, yeah. I have read this at your house, I believe.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's got kind of more cartoony illustrations than maybe something like Arabella, but it's about this little boy. And he has an elephant who is his pet. And he goes to a pet club and he tries to join. And then he sees that there's a sign that says strictly no elephants. And so he walks away and he's just so sad. And I want to read to you just a little snippet from the middle. Well, I'm just going to show you. He's taking his elephant for a walk. So this is the kind of illustrations. And the elephant doesn't like cracks. So he helps lift him over. And the story, right, is just it kind of he's doing all of these things and he's helping his elephant and everyone kind of ends with that's what friends do, right? And it's just this beautiful, but it doesn't hit you over the head about it, right? So anyway, he has just been told that he can't come in, right? My tiny elephant leads me back to the sidewalk, never minding the cracks. That's what friends do. Brave the scary things for you. And so then he walks down so there's some places where there's nothing to say, right? And so he sees this little girl sitting on a bench. Did you try to go to the pet club meeting too? The girl asks. Yes, I say, but they don't allow elephants. The sign didn't mention skunks, the girl says, but they don't want us to play with them either. They don't know any better, I tell her. He doesn't stink, the girl adds. No, he doesn't, I agree. What if we start our own club? You can probably guess how it ends, but it's just so sweet and I love it. And it has an elephant. So
it's got to be Graydon's favorite book of all time.
It is up
there.
It is up there, yes.
Yeah. I love that. And even like that about skunks, there's another beautiful book that's this one that we will talk about in the future, but it's called Winter is Coming. And this girl who's, she's sitting up in her tree. It's not a tree house. It's just a stand and just kind of noticing all the animals getting ready. And she sees a skunk walk under and she just makes the comment that, Dad says skunks don't smell bad. They smell real. Like it's, or something along those lines. I probably butchered that quote, but just, it kind of just gives you because we just so often say, oh, skunks stink, and they do. But just, we just don't think about that perspective sometimes. Anyways, so that is a beautiful story. And I don't own that book, but that is one that we will put on our list because I think I read it. I saw it on your shelf and you had talked about it. And so I pulled out and just, beautiful story. And I love the illustrations that just go so well with the feel of that story.
Yeah. What do you got next?
Right on. So the last one that I want to mention today is, again, this was, I think, the first book that we got from this author. He does illustrations for a number of books, but he also authors a few stories. And we were all gathered together as a whole family. It's probably maybe the last time we were all together out in Michigan at Evan's house. So
Mm.
this would have been, shoot, 4 or 5, maybe.
2018, I think.
Yeah, so shoot, 7 years ago when we were all together. So all
Ugh.
of us kids with all of our kids at the time. And we had gotten this book as a Christmas present from mom and dad. And so one evening we sat down to read this book, and I had never read it before. And it was really funny because the first line of the book, it reminded me of Haley Joel Osment in Secondhand Lions, because I always hear him come through when I read this line, because the first line of the book is, "There's nobody to play with," I complained. "She doesn't even have a TV." So I just think of Haley Joel Osment, no television in Secondhand Lions.
Yes.
But you started reading, and the first 3 or 4 pages, it's this. The book is The Raft by Jim LaMarche, and written and illustrated by Jim LaMarche. And it's this boy who his dad works at a factory or a plant, and he's going to be working all summer. So he's dropping his son off with his grandmother, who lives on the river, and the boy's not happy about it. He wants to stay with his dad, and he says, grandma's kind of odd. And his dad's like, yeah, she is kind of odd. She's a river rat. She lives on the river, and she's a self-made artist doing sketches and carving wood, and her house is just kind of littered with all these things. And the first 3 pages, as we were reading this as a family, we were talking about this because this happens in movies a lot, where the kids start out just kind of a little sassy, and so he's just not happy to be there. And at one point his grandmother gives him she's keeping him busy. He's chopping wood, he's helping her change the oil in her truck or the spark plugs, and she sends him down to catch dinner, and she tells him where to throw his line in, and he gets down there and he's like, "There's no fish over there, like that's too close, and he just doesn't catch anything." And so she says, "Better luck tomorrow," and he's like, "Yeah, whatever." And so as we're reading this, I was like, oh man, this kid's got like a horrible attitude. But you just see this progression as he slowly he discovers this raft. He's down fishing one day, and this raft he falls asleep on the dock, and this raft bumps into it with a cane pole, and he pulls it in, and he's kind of thinking that I've got to keep this kind of secretive. But his grandma kind of acts like she knows that it was there all along, and she gives him supplies to take out and to go rafting down this river. And as he does, he just kind of discovers all of the beauty of life on the river, all the animals. And so she gives him just different materials to start doing sketches of his own, and he starts sketching all the wildlife and all the animals, and he ends up having just the most amazing summer. And by the end, he has become a river rat, just like his grandmother. And it's just a beautiful story. And I won't read an excerpt from the story, but I do want to read the intro from the author, because I just think it just sets the tone for what this book is, what it means to him. And again, I think it's like all great stories. It might not be a true story. I think it's based on this author's experience and life experiences, but there's so much truth and beauty in it. It's a note from the author. "This story is like the cigar box I kept as a boy. It's full of bits and pieces of my boyhood summers. Like Nikki in The Raft, I spent those summers with my grandparents at a cottage in the North Woods." Man, the North Woods, just that phrase means so much to us both, going to Maines or Kastner's up in the North Woods of Minnesota. My grandma was a self-taught artist and a fine fryer of perch and bluegill. Also, like Nikki, I once found an old raft. It happened one day when my dad and I were running our dog Brownie in the rolling hills near town. We came to an abandoned camp where we found a small artesian pond with water coming up from underground springs as cold and clear as glass. In the weeds along the shore, we found an old raft and a smooth pine pole. Much to my surprise, my dad let me take the raft out on the pond by myself. And again, like Nikki, I discovered the power of drawing and learned that when you draw something, you get closer to it and know it better. This story is a little bit about all of those things: a summer in the woods, a special grandparent, becoming a river rat, and becoming an artist. And this story, man, we read this many times. I love this. The illustrations are just gorgeous. And this is one where I have gone out and I have tried to find just about any book with illustrations by Jim LaMarche. And me and my kids often say, "Oh, our favorite illustrator." So it is a wonderful, wonderful story. And the pictures absolutely match it. I've got a couple other books of his behind me that are also beautiful that we'll talk about in future episodes. But The Raft by Jim LaMarche, one of my favorites. And if you haven't read it, I think you would enjoy it as an adult on your own, and reading it with your kids. It's a beautiful story. kind of want to segue into, as we kind of wrap up just this brief segment on illustrated books that we love, and just talk about, illustrated books in general. Jenelle, you have written an illustrated book. You have a number of novels out, and all of them are novels. What would you say? The mostly sci-fi, not sci-fi, but fantasy fiction?
Yeah, fantasy fiction. Yeah, for sure.
And so just recently, within the last couple of years, you have written and published an illustrated book. "'Twas an Evening in Bethlehem," Christmas story. But I would love to hear a little bit about the process, because this was written by you, and illustrated by Sierra Klein.
Yeah, because I can't draw.
Yeah. But just tell us a little bit about that process, where the idea came from and how that worked, working with an artist. Just tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a funny story, actually, because it didn't happen. If a book can happen organically, this one did. If a book could happen by accident, this one did. So I didn't actually set out to write a children's picture book. I didn't actually set out to write a book at all. So we have we go to our church, and there's a Christmas Eve service every year. And there's usually a little segment of that service that is for the children. And then there's like a slightly, longer segment of a little bit of a sermon, right, for the adults. But there's always this little segment for the children. And it was 2019. And our worship director reached out to me and asked if I'd ever written any poetry. And I said, yeah, I've written some poetry. She knew I was a writer. She'd read some of my books, and she said, okay, I'm looking for something in the style of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." And she said for somebody to read to the kids during the Christmas Eve service. And she said, I've been looking for other versions of this poem, and everything I've found is either not Christian, or if it is Christian, it's kind of depressing. So I'm kind of looking for something that's Christian and not depressing in the style of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." And so the first thing I did was I went and I looked to see if that poem was in the public domain, and it is. And so then the second thing I asked was, do you want it in the same exact style, the same number of lines, the same rhyme scheme, that sort of thing? And she said, yeah, I would. And so I was like, okay. So I sat down, and I kid you not, it probably took me half an hour. And then there was a little bit of editing here and there, but really it just flowed. It just came. And it's the story of the very first Christmas. And it's told from the perspective of, if the innkeeper had a young child who was witnessing all of these events, as Mary and Joseph show up at the inn and have to go in the stable, and then the shepherds coming, and just this baby being born in this child's stable, right? And the child recognizing that there's something different and special about this child and these events, right? And just kind of awestruck that they're getting to witness it. And so anyway, so I wrote the poem, and I handed it over to our worship director, and she, unbeknownst to me, reached out to another person in Sierra Klein in our congregation, and asked if she would be willing to paint a few scenes from this poem, and that they could put up on the big screen. Well, so Sierra did that. She painted like 4 pictures. And then our worship director was like, oh, she was kind of thinking, wouldn't it be cool if the person who read this to the kids was able to read it like a storybook? So she took the pictures and the words, and she took them to Walmart, and she got them printed in this like hardbound book. And then she, a couple weeks before the Christmas Eve service, she shows up at church and she handed me one.
Oh, no.
And I looked at Derek. I said, I wrote a children's book.
Oh, that's amazing.
So then after that, so then, it was read to the children at Christmas Eve. And then everybody in our church was like, where can I get a copy of that? And I was like, give me a minute. So so I talked to Sierra because I was like, it needs a few more pictures. So I talked to Sierra and worked out a way to pay her for the pictures she'd already done, and commissioned a few more. And then Derek did the formatting, putting it all together in book form, and getting it, published. And it is definitely more of an effort to work with illustrations and having to format that, and make sure that everything turns out looking nice. But it was really fun, and kind of like I said, a funny story because it totally happened by accident. But
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, man, the power of, you know, saying yes to an opportunity, and just seeing where God can take it is just really cool, because it's a beautiful book. It's obviously, if you're familiar with I don't know, would you call it a poem? The night.
Yeah, it's a poem. Yes.
And it follows that style, but it's subtle and beautiful, and the illustrations go so well with the feel of the poem. It is good. Do you think in your future you will, collaborate with artists again to write more children's books, or not children's books, I guess, but illustrated books like this?
I definitely, yes. I
Really?
have one actually already written, and the illustrations are all done. My formatter's being a little slow.
Come on, Derek.
Exactly.
We'll find what's Independence Day. We'll see if you're as good as we all hope you are.
Yes.
We're all counting on you. No pressure.
It's another Christmas one. It's a little on the sad side.
Is this the one that you read to us? Oh, yes. A few Christmases ago. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm excited about this one.
So
you guys hopefully
we can hopefully we can get that out near a Christmas at some point. Like I said, it's written. The illustrations are all done. I just have to get it out there. I've been so focused on my novels, trying to release 5 novels in less than 2.5 years, and that's a lot. But yeah, so that one is. And then also Sierra has actually talked to me about hey, when could we collaborate? So the new book, the new Christmas one, the illustrations are by a friend of mine named Beth Yeatis. And so it's a slightly different style and just as beautiful. And then Sierra has actually also reached out to me and said, hey, do you ever want to do a book again? I think that'd be really fun. And I do have an idea. I haven't written it down, but I do have an idea for another children's picture book that would be more of a fantasy story and have a dragon. So I asked Sierra, I said, how do you feel about painting dragons? And she's like, I think I can handle that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll do fantastic. What do you enjoy that process? So recently, I have I've divin into filmmaking.
Okay, dived.
I have dived into filmmaking full time, and so I guess you would classify me as a solo filmmaker. But I joined a community of other filmmakers recently, and I was talking with them, and I said, I never had any great desire to be a solo filmmaker. I would actually love to be a part of a team and just be involved in the process of bringing stories to life through film, even if that meant, being the gaffer or holding the boom mic or bringing coffee to set, like just to be involved in the process, to be a part of a team. I would think a lot of what you do as an author is very, very, maybe not lonely, but alone, like coming up with these worlds and these stories and brainstorming and, seeking for inspiration. Do you enjoy the collaborative parts? Obviously working with an illustrator and trying to share your vision, but allowing them the freedom to bring their vision to your story. Is that hard at all to let go of that? Or do you enjoy working on those things and collaborating with others like editors and formatters? And do you enjoy the collaborative, almost a team aspect of writing?
Yes. So I'm an introvert, but I'm an introvert who likes people. So I like to be around people that I already know I like, and I don't mind meeting new people. Some things, some relationships just hit off faster than others, obviously, but
Sure.
I do like that collaborative aspect of things. So for example, I love working with my cover artist. She is fantastic. And part of the reason that I love working with her is, one, we've done like 5 covers together now, and she is she's really good at what she does. What she does is something I can't do, but I have an eye for what looks good. And we have this great relationship where she sends me something, and it's great because every time she sends me a cover, it's this, oh no, I think we've done 6 covers together now. There's one that people don't know about. But so she'll send me like the first version, right? And originally working with cover artists and even working with Savannah, there was, this hesitation in me to give any kind of critique, because it's not something I can do. So who am I really to say, I don't like that, right? And so that part is hard for me, is the being able to give a critique and being able to say, hey, could you tone down the swirls a little bit, or could you add a little bit more flair to this, or could you, and so that part is hard for me. But after working with Savannah as much as I have, like she and I have this great relationship where I can kind of give her an idea of, this is kind of what I'm looking for, and then she, throws a rough draft at me, and then I kind of pick it apart, and then she goes, oh, okay, cool, and then she comes back with something else, and it gets to a point where I start to feel like she's almost reaching into my brain and pulling out what I'm envisioning and making it happen. And I love that about her, because she's so good at that, and I'm so bad at describing what I want. So, so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if I ask for something and it looks close, I'm going to be like, oh, that's wonderful. Right. But so
Right.
it helps to have a relationship with people where I feel like I can ask for a tweak, or I can say, hey, could you add something, or could you maybe do this one differently? Or
Do you think it makes sense to you why directors seem to work with the same actors in every movie? There's think of Christopher Nolan. He's got the same 5 actors in every movie. And I almost wonder if it's because he knows, there's a brilliant short little clip of Gary Oldman talking about the genius of working with Christopher Nolan. He said he was doing a scene, and I think one of the Batman films, I think it was probably the Dark Knight, and he said Christopher Nolan wouldn't give him a lot of direction, but he would just say small things that would give him everything. He said at one point he was doing a scene, and he said he came up to him and he just said, the stakes are higher. And Gary Oldman said, got it. That's all he needed. And he was able to take that direction and deliver exactly what they needed for the moment. And I almost wonder, do you think, as you work with, cover artists, and we will, I think we're going to do an episode in the future just on cover design. It would be awesome to have Savannah on, and maybe some of the other people you've worked with on illustrations or on book covers, to just talk about how important that is. In the world of books, we say don't judge a book by its cover, but that's all I do, right? I mean, if I go in, it's got to jump out, or it has to be interesting for me to pull it off the shelf and to open it, to give it a chance. And maybe that's wrong. And obviously you probably miss out on some beautiful stories if that's the only way that you pick stories, but it's an important element of telling stories. Same thing with videos. They say, well, you got to have a great thumbnail if you want your video to, well, it's like, well, I don't care about that. I just want the story to be great. But it's an important way to draw people's interest, to bring them in. And so we will talk to some of the folks that you've worked with. But does that make sense to you? Why?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's just a very relatable, human, normal thing, is you find the people that you work well with, and you find the people that you're comfortable working with, and you find the people that you can trust to deliver the type of work that you expect or that you desire. And then, it's very easy to just kind of go, well, I know that person is going to be this kind of experience, right? Like working with this person is going to be this kind of experience. And that's, something that just makes sense. I mean, I work with the same team with every book I write. I have 3 rounds of editors. I have 3 different editors that I pay for every single one of my books, because each one of them gives me something different. One of them gives me that 30,000 foot, hey, there's a plot hole here, or hey, this character is totally acting not like themselves. And then I have, the line editor who kind of goes, okay, you've overused the word, I don't know, what is one of my overused words? Smile. All of your characters are smiling all the time. It doesn't matter what's happening in the story. Things are really horrible, but everybody's smiling. Maybe you should tone it down.
Oh man, I was gonna go meet a girl in Morocco. No, African warlord, ship of death.
Exactly. Right. And then I have my proofreader who catches all of my typos and is teaching me how to use M dashes properly. So, there's just that, and you find the people that, I think you also find the people that have a similar vision or are willing to hop on board with your vision and make sure that it happens, make it happen. And I'm sure that directors of movies have that, and they might be willing to branch out because maybe Christian Bale can't play every character that Christopher Nolan writes, but so then you have to find somebody new. But I'm sure that there is that certain amount of, I know this person will deliver what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And I think we're better together. It's funny, just this last weekend, we had cousins over, and Reese, my oldest daughter, was making a movie with them. And it happens every time. And it was so funny because this happened to us growing up when we would make movies together. About halfway into their movie making, they all came storming into the house. Everybody was upset and they all went to their separate rooms. And I went up into my daughter's room, and she was crying, and she was just upset because the boys were unhappy with their roles and they didn't like their lines, and the girls were unhappy with the wardrobe, and nobody wanted to do what she wanted them to do. And I sat down with her because we've been doing, every night we're watching some tutorials or doing some practice with her camera so she can learn some filmmaking techniques. And I was sitting down with her and said, Reese, when you watch a movie at the end, you see the credits, you see how many people are involved in making a movie. I said, a big part of any creative process, no matter what it is that you're doing, is going to be working with people. And I said, as a director, you need to know all the lighting and the audio and the look you're going for, and trying to put all these different pieces together to tell this story. But you're also going to have to be able to work with people, and you're going to have to give up a little bit to let certain people bring their ideas in, so that it can be exciting for them, so they can add to the project rather than just having it just be, that was a problem that I had growing up, was just being so like, it's got to be exactly what I want. And it makes it no fun for everybody else. But it is, I think, as creators, even though a lot of the process that, for you, Jenelle, and also for me, for our sister Brittany, writing and creating music, it can be a very alone type of work. But there are times, and there will be times in the future where it will be done together. And I think we're better that way. I think, iron sharpening iron, as a comment I made in an intro post the other day, where it's like, we bouncing ideas off each other, and other people with gifts and abilities that we don't have. But like you said, you have a good eye and you know what you want. And so being able to work together. So I think it's a really cool thing. And in future episodes, it'll be really fun to talk to other authors, other artists, other musicians, other filmmakers, just about the creative process and how we can go on this journey together. Anyways, I think that kind of wraps up what we were going to talk about in today's episode, talking about some of our favorite illustrated books. And we've got stacks more of them that we can look at in the future. I will try. Don't hold me to it, but I will try to put links. They won't be affiliate links or anything like that. But just if you're interested and you would like to look for some of these books, I'll try to put locations probably on Amazon in the description of the video below, so you guys can find some of these books yourself if you're interested. And please do share with us some of your favorite illustrated books, because we're always looking for adventures to go on in the stories that we read as a family. So please share those with us.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much to all of you who left me some comments on my blog and gave me some ideas of things to watch. Those movies that you have mentioned are now on my list of things to check out. So I really appreciate that. And I just want to thank all of you for joining us here in our little corner of the interwebs and coming in out of the storm, spending some time here in the storm cave. So that's all we got for now. Bye bye. Have fun storming the castle.
Bye bye.
You think it'll work?
We're going to go with it. It'll never work.